Okay. It's
Not still going.
welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined with the normal Sunday night crew, Brian Maffey, Anthony Russo, and fresh back from the University of Delaware Scouting Department, Josh Townsend. Josh, how the hell have you been?
We've been busy. Transfer portal, obviously, you can only imagine how busy that is, but got through it. We're on the high school recruiting now for the 27s and 28s. So everything's going good. We had a really successful all season. We had a really successful season as a program in general. So a lot of good things to look forward to and just overall great experience.
Yeah, so I remember I was texting you during a Delaware game. Like I was watching the game on TV and you're like, stop texting me. I'm on the sideline. Text me after the game or something. So it like I was thinking of you when I saw games on TV. It is really cool to see you've gone from podcasting with draft professors. I think that you're living your best life as a scout for Delaware. I just I'm thrilled to have you back on the station. It's good to see you in good spirits. So welcome back.
It's good to be back. You guys, the draft professors specifically, helped me get to the point where I am now, just giving me the platform to speak out, improve my public speaking, get better on my scouting reports, how to actually watch film, collaborate with a bunch of really good guys in the industry. Yeah, it was just a great stepping stone for me. And yeah, we're taking it one day at a time, but we'll always be back on this on the channel for you guys.
Oh, well, I hope you can come back when the actual NFL draft is happening and we can catch up between draft picks. Anthony, today we're going to talk about positional value. And we chatted a little bit backstage before we went live. But if we're talking about positional value, I think there's 2 or 3 layers to the conversation. But do you want to maybe introduce the topic and kick this podcast off?
Yeah, so I think I was kind of the one who pitched this as a discussion that we could have. I think there's every year there's a conversation around positional value in its most basic sense of what positions are worthy of being top 5, top 10 picks. This year, I think it's particularly a interesting discussion. We have a lot of very talented players at what would be considered non-premium positions, and it's also a generally weaker class as a whole in terms of high level, potentially blue chip talent. So guys like Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio State, Jeremiah Love, the running back from Notre Dame, Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon, guys that are overall seen by many as top 10 to 15 just talents, not factoring in position. But how often do we see a safety go top 5 or a linebacker go top 5? Rarely, if ever. So the question is, as it is again every year, but particularly this year, do you value positions enough to take them that high, or do the offensive tackles and the edge rushers and the quarterbacks and all that, do they still take precedent even if they are not seen as just as talented football players, but they play positions that inherently have more quote-unquote value? So that's sort of the discussion. And as you said, there's other layers to this. There's the contract and financial aspect of this as well that we can certainly get into. But I think the basic jumping off point is just how we as evaluators and how the NFL evaluators and anyone else who's scouting or anything like that is willing to weigh position versus talent level.
Brian, how much of it do you think it's the importance of the position on the football field relative to the value of the contract?
I mean, yeah, that does obviously factor into it. I think especially now with how we have the first round contracts and you got that 5th-year option thing, and it's of the top 10 or whatever it is of that position, or 15, whatever it is. It's a lot of times where you're seeing these teams that are declining the 5th-year option on these, linebackers are taking the first in the end of the first round, or the safeties are taken. Sometimes they're declining it, or they're extending with some other different deal that would pay them less than what that 5th-year option would be. So I think that obviously is taking an effect with teams as far as, I mean, already those positions are not super valued just in general in NFL, unless you're like a generational, I shouldn't use generational. I hate that word kind of, but just a special player, at that position. Unless you're one of those type of players, it's kind of cost prohibitive to take those type of players in the first round a lot of times when you're having to give them these 5th-year guarantees sometimes.
So, Josh, when you are recruiting, do you put different NIL funding or scholarships in different positions?
Well, I'll be completely honest with you. The college football recruiting scene compared to how the NFL is scouting their college players to bring in for the draft every year is two completely different things, especially in our position with our status of a group of 5 school. We're really just trying to find really good talent that's underrated out of the 4 and 5 stars of the high recruiting system. So a lot of deep digging, but for the NFL, they're looking at it in a completely different fashion. They are taking into account the supply and demand. They're taking into account the positional value, how much the contract importance really do play a factor into this. The strength of the draft class, does their players fit with their scheme? So it's a completely different thing if we're looking at them hand in hand. Yeah, I can't really say there's any similarities between the two, but it is a really intriguing argument this week, the whole position value thing, just specifically for this draft class in general. Because let's say if we had Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, let's name all these tier 2 positional players that are like the high end guys in this year's draft class. You stick them in last year's or the years prior, they are a mid first round pick in the top 20s, fighting for a first round pick. Now, I'm not saying that about everybody, but that just goes to show the difference in draft classes every single year. So this week specifically, I think it's a really intriguing conversation that we're having.
Okay. And we should also just go, Sonny Styles. I'm going to say you called your shot on that one last October. Like October 2024, you were saying if he goes back to school, we're looking at like one of the best players in the country.
Now, I didn't think he would turn to the level that he did this year. And of course, he's still got a couple things that he needs to clean up in his game. But when you're talking about a measurement standpoint, going along with matching the tape and then having the football IQ and the mentality to play that position, he was a really fun guy to watch last year. So it's really cool to see the progression that he made this year into a legitimate top 15 pick.
Okay. So like some of the facts that got pointed out. So if Caleb Downs, I think it's taken 10th overall, and I think is that Miami's pick or Cincinnati's? I think that's Cincinnati's pick.
Cincinnati, yeah.
Yeah. So I think if he's taken by Cincinnati, he's going to enter the NFL as the 15th highest paid safety. Are we comfortable putting a rookie at that salary scope? Because the same thing happened with Bijan Robinson. Same thing happened with Ashton Genty. According to tweets by Dane Brugler, that's how NFL GMs think. Anthony, is that how you think? Like, the Jets have a couple of picks there. Do you think they're going to spend them on non-premium positions?
I think, I don't run the Jets, so I, as just someone who is evaluating players, it's not how I think, because that's not, I'm not paid to think that way. I don't doubt for a second that that's how, the decision makers for the Jets and other teams think and operate. I specifically to just Caleb Downs for a second. If you told me that taking him 10th overall means he's the 15th highest paid safety in the league, I'm completely fine with that. Like, that in no way stops me from taking him 10. I would argue that he could even go higher, and I'd be fine with that. I think top 5 would be a hard sell for me, as much as I like him. But I view it as, where you can project Caleb Downs however highly you think of him. I personally believe he has all pro level potential as a safety in this league. But even if you don't necessarily think that, he could very easily, I think, step in day one for the Bengals, or the Dolphins or whoever, and be the 15th best safety in the NFL. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a far stretch to make, even if you don't think he's this otherworldly athlete, or you don't think he has the greatest coverage skills in the world. Those are some criticism I think people would have of him, but he is very capable of being a top 15 safety and earning that in terms of just from a contract perspective pretty quickly. So I wouldn't worry about that. And I will say too, I know there are, we all build our own big boards. Although I don't know if Josh is these days, if he's too busy scouting for Delaware, but we're a bunch of us are building boards out and stacking players and all this. And some people build a board and they do factor in position when they build the board, and some people factor in position very heavily. We'll just shoot up quarterbacks on their board because they think, and it is the most important position, and therefore it should be higher prioritized. I'm someone who when I make a board, I don't factor in position really at all. I just take my grades for players and I, lay them out, and whatever the grade is, the grade is. So I don't think there's a wrong or right way between those. But just, for me, I don't think position, again, like positional value is something, and contract, financial future is something that I'm personally thinking about as I evaluate.
So Brian, you follow the Packers, you do a lot of draft research.
Yep.
And the Packers, I don't even think draft in the top 10 very often. So the Packers, even picking later in round one, when was the last time they selected a linebacker, safety, or even an interior or offensive lineman in round one, to your knowledge?
Well, Quay Walker was the last linebacker they took a few years ago at 22. The last safety was Darnell Savage in 2021, I believe. And then before that would be HaHa Clinton-Dix, and he was like 16, I think, or something like that, back in 2000. What year was that? 14 or something like that?
So it does happen. So it's not
does.
like the Howie Roseman theory of drafting. Like if we talk to an Eagles podcaster, the Eagles are pretty much drafting an edge or a lineman or a corner in round one every year. They're not even.
Because before Quay, the last one they took in the first round was AJ Hawk back in 2006. So it had been really long time since they took one in the first round. So it's still a position generally they don't value in the first round unless there's something that stands out about that player that they like. Kind of the same thing with safety. For at least for the Packers, with the safety, he has to have like really good cover skills, have ball skills, stuff like that. Somebody who can affect the passing game. So it has to be that type of player. So they're not going to take like a Jamal Adams or a player like that in the first round. They wouldn't, because he doesn't fit what they want. But generally they do. But generally they do stay away from those players for the most part in the first round, at least.
So Josh, in your grading, do you factor in like with a positional multiplier or anything like that about like a quarterback is more important than an interior lineman? Or
in years prior, the only positional value I've added was the quarterback position, and you had to over the last couple of years with the surplus of talent that we had in the draft boards. I didn't touch wide receiver, edge rusher, or offensive tackle, but if I was to, those would be the next three position groups that you would put a multiplier on, quote unquote, just because you're looking at top end talent, you're looking at how much they're getting paid on the market after their rookie deals are done. So that's why we group these position groups as we do in different tiers. Like obviously quarterback, edge rusher, offensive tackle, corner, and then really like a wide receiver one, you can group in that beginning tier one, which is where franchises are trying to get those franchise players to elevate the overall team. And then you can put whatever other position group in your tier two or tier three, however you want to change it. More likely than not, it's like interior defensive line, tight ends, in the box and outside of the box safeties as your tier twos, and then the running backs or the off-ball linebackers are your tier three guys. So that's kind of the lens of where NFL teams are grouping these position groups. But in a draft class like this, like we've said, a lot of those discussions are going to come up on draft day because Caleb Downs is going to get taken high. Jeremiah Love's going to get taken high. The two linebackers from Ohio State are going to get taken high. Sadiq's probably going to be a top 25 pick. So there's going to be a lot of outliers in this year's class.
Okay.
It's going to have to be.
Yeah. So Anthony, I posed this question ahead of time, and I realized that I'm probably asking the wrong person because you're lower on Jeremiah Love. But who's the safer prospect to you, Jeremiah Love or Ruben Bain?
I mean, yeah, and also, I mean, safer is sort of a relative term. But I mean, look, because we were talking before, and there's obviously the arm length question with Bain. He is a bit of an outlier in that way. I also think you could say like his build isn't sort of the traditional ideal build that you look for in a defensive end, and that's why even some people have suggested he play 3-tech in certain schemes and certain defensive packages and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I look at the tape and I see just a potentially dominant pass rusher in the NFL. The way that he's just so violent and powerful with his hands. The way that I think for a guy his size, he's actually quite bendy. He could still set a strong edge, even though again, like he has these short arms, but the short arms don't show up when you watch him, in my view. It doesn't seem to really hinder him. So that's why I'm willing to sort of, I don't want to say overlook it, but I'm willing to like forgive it because it doesn't get reflected. Whereas somebody like, for example, like Cassius Howell has short arms, has even shorter arms, and I think that shows up in his tape more than it does with Bain. So if you're asking me who's safer, I would say Ruben Bain. Again, like you said too, I'm also just lower on Jeremiah Love. But I do, if you ask me, for example, like, Ruben Bain versus Sonny Styles, I think that's a very valid discussion, or Ruben Bain versus Caleb Downs. I think you could have a long discussion about that, or at least I could. I think it also kind of depends on what team, each team would need a different player, and how they would utilize these players is important. I think that also kind of gets lost in the whole positional value conversation. Is, we just saw it with Ashton Genty, right? Going to the Raiders. Great player. I think, I think we all saw him as a top 10 caliber talent. Again, not factoring in position, just a top 10 player in last year's class. And he went to the Raiders and didn't play, wasn't bad, but I don't think played up to the level that we'd kind of hoped for. And the primary reason for that was because the team was not ready to facilitate a player like Ashton Genty and help him be successful. The offensive line was garbage. The passing game was garbage. Pretty much the entire team was garbage, and it did not, it didn't foster an environment for Ashton Genty to be the player that he thought he was. I believe that could very easily happen to Jeremiah Love if he goes to a bad football team that is not ready to again, like help him be successful and give him what he needs to be successful, we could see the same exact thing no matter how high you think Jeremiah Love should be. So that's sort of the issue with this too, is there's certain positions that just don't have the kind of impact that you'd want because they just don't touch the ball enough, or they just don't have as much direct impact on an entire offense or an entire team as other positions do.
So, Brian, as you think about positional value, do you use any type of multiplier in your board to get certain positions closer to the top?
Not really. No, I don't. Maybe a slight bump, like a hair bump here or there. Like if I have a quarterback and a running back rated kind of similar, then I'll put the quarterback a little above him, that type of thing. But it's like I said, it's not really. It's like I said, maybe a slight bump here or there, but it's not much of anything.
Okay. So as we look around, like from a team building standpoint, like Josh, I think when you were pointing out, like, offensive tackle and edge from a team building standpoint are more important positions than, let's say, linebacker or interior offensive line. So you said that from a team building standpoint, you think about that, but you don't really let that affect your board beyond quarterback right now.
No, because talent is talent. Let's not get that confused at the end of the day. We have seen examples, Ashton Genty, for example, of these players going in the top 10 and going really high in drafts, and they don't fit the positional value quota. I think you can be devil's advocate and say also for this draft, that's why a lot of these edge rushers and offensive tackles are getting pushed into the top 50 in the first round of this year's class, because there's just not a whole bunch of surplus of high-end talent this year, which is okay. But that's why we're seeing guys like Akeem Mesidor, which I haven't watched film on him yet. I can't say anything about him, but like a 24, 25-year-old edge rusher, which he had a really good year. He's getting talked about as a legit top 20 pick. Years prior, the age of different prospects play into it, and there'd be more of a talent pool he had to go up against. So there's always a battle of pushing those guys up because of positional value and then neglecting the actual better talents in the draft. And GMs are also thinking, like, they're trying to get as much surplus of talent as they can. Of course, they'll draft some designated picks for specific positional needs. Like I can speak for the Ravens last year, Emory Jones in the 3rd round, which some might thought that was a steal at that spot. They made that selection because they needed to fit a need as a backup offensive guard. So teams do that, but more times than not, they're looking to bring in as much talent as they possibly can. So I would be more on the side of guys like the main guys we've been talking about today, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love, being pushed into the top 10 and top 15 because of the talent gap this year.
And you think it's the talent gap, meaning that it wouldn't be in, I guess, other draft classes, those players wouldn't go as high?
No. And like you can take a guy like Brock Bowers a couple years ago, for example. Some had him as a damn near top 5 player in the draft. I did personally, but he fell all the way down to 13. So we can see, for examples, like these guys will get pushed down the draft. I just don't see it happening this year with the guys that we're talking about being top 5 and top 10 picks.
Okay. So, Anthony, any other positional value discussion points that you would like to bring to Josh or Brian or myself?
Well, one of the things I thought of too, that anyone could answer this. I feel like I've sort of, I don't know, I guess the word is evolved in terms of certain. So like I think I've come to value safety more, for example, in the past couple years. Seeing what Kyle Hamilton does for the Ravens and seeing what Brian Branch does for the Lions, and obviously they're not, they do different things and they're not really the same kind of safety exactly, but I think there's noticeable. There was a noticeable difference in both of those teams for both of those players. There's other examples as well. I think Xavier Watts this past year for Atlanta added a layer to that secondary that was really needed in terms of creating turnovers, and actual ball production in that secondary that was really needed. So I would ask, safety specific or just in general, in the last, I don't know, like 5 to 10 years, if we've seen, if anyone's sort of changed their view on any of these non-premium positions. I can throw that to Brian first, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in the last few years, for me at least, not really that I can think of. I haven't really changed my view on it too much, but I've always felt that, like, kind of what Josh said earlier about, you're just looking for good football players in a way. So it's like, if a guy is a really good safety, then he's a really good safety. But of course, there is still positional value with that. But if he is, a Caleb Downs, if he is Ed Reed, although I think Ed Reed went later, if I can't remember exactly where he went, but one of those type of players, you take those players wherever, you take them regardless. If you take them top 15, whatever, that guy, that guy's going to be, probably a Pro Bowler at least, probably for you. So I mean, if it's a special player, you take him regardless of what position. So I think with that, there's that, yeah, of course. But I mean, outside of that, I don't value the position as much. Certain positions, especially like, say, running back, those guys wear out. The majority of them wear out within 5 years, 5-6 years. They're worn out. They can't hang anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there's the dudes, of course, that'll hang on for 10 years and stuff like that. They'll put up 1,000 yards every year and stuff like that. But most of them, they're done by their 28, 29 years old. So I wouldn't take one of those guys in the first round generally, unless, again, it's a special player. But even then, it's just basically Ginty and Love. I can think of the last few years that I've had first round grades on running backs that I can think of offhand. And of course, Bijan, but 3 guys over the last maybe 5 years. That's out of all the running backs. So, I mean, that kind of tells you something there.
Who do you have rated higher, Genty or Love?
Genty.
And then Anthony, for you, is it Genty or Love?
Yeah, it's Genty.
And Josh, have you graded Love?
Not an official. No, I have not put an official grade on anybody in this class. As upset that makes me. The past couple of years, I've been really honed in on the draft classes, and I've made it like a mission to get at least 400 grades in almost everybody that gets drafted and pick up priority free agents every year. But yeah, no, haven't had time to really sit down and watch tape like I've wanted to. Based off what I've seen, though, I would still lean Genty. I mean, ask everybody last year at this time what they were thinking about Genty. Genty was the second coming of LaDainian Tomlinson. That's what we were all talking about him like. So Jeremiah Love's not that, but Jeremiah Love is still, in my opinion, a damn good football player.
Yep.
Okay. And it's, how do I want to say it? I get the feeling, right, with just listening to all of you guys and all the different draft professors, that this draft class feels like it's missing something at the top. Like a top 10 pick this year isn't as good as a top 10 pick the last 2 years.
Yeah,
after number one, yeah, it's basically.
I literally was gonna say the 1 year the Jets get a top 2 pick. Well, not the 1 year, but the year Jets pick second, and there's one good quarterback, and then no good players at like any of the premium positions or whatever. I was gonna bring up kind of the opposite end of the positional value discussion. I think there's an argument to be made that the positions that are traditionally seen as like the premium positions are losing value. So like left tackle, I think has been and probably may still be seen as like the most non-quarterback valuable position. In terms of, roster building and drafting and stuff like that. But I feel like now where teams are not necessarily putting their best pass rusher on that side of the defensive line. Also, teams are investing in interior pass rusher, which is also, I think, maybe dimming the value of edge rushers in general. Again, I'm not saying that they're not valuable by any means, but I do think we've also seen a shift in philosophy of defense and offense to where left tackle and edge rusher that lines up on that side of the defensive line are maybe not quite as like hard set, like quarterback edge rusher left tackle or quarterback left tackle edge rusher. Like that feels like it's been the top three for as long as I've been watching football, at least. So again, I can open up to anybody who wants to respond to that, but I think that's also something that I've picked up on.
You've also identified the positions that play the longest in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you draft a quarterback and that pick hits, you've got that position nailed down for 15 years. You draft a tackle and that position hits, you have that position locked down for 10 to 12 years. An edge is probably going to be able to play for 10 years. So what that means is that if you hit on offense, both offensive tackles, both edges, plus quarterback, you've hit on 5 positions. That means that you have 17 other starters that you have to find. And now you have whatever draft picks you have, you can focus on those 17 positions. To me, it's more about, I'm going to just call it probability of success. But that's the engineer in me. I mean, I look for probabilities and what's going to be your route to success. I know that Jerry Ostrowski debunked some of that engineering analytics on a couple of the Buffalo Bills podcasts. But Josh, I don't know what your math skills are like, but what do you think of that take by me?
It all plays a part into the big picture. It's no denying it. I wouldn't say it's the whole thing, but every little thing does matter when you're going into these evaluations. At least that's what I'm thinking from a front office perspective. And back to Anthony's point where he was talking about how positional values, they're kind of shifting over the last couple of years. It's because the whole NFL in general has shifted in the last couple of years. It is more offense-driven. Defenses, let's be real, are living in nickel defense the whole entire game. Take the Seahawks, for example. They're disguising everything just off of one base package. That's where defenses are trying to go to more, be more simplistic and still have your pillars, have your edge rushers, but it's becoming more of a rotation now. Have your linebackers that can do a little bit of everything. But in my opinion, I think corners are becoming more valuable than ever. And we have a good group of them from this year's class with Mansour, Terrell, and a bunch of others. I need to do more work on this class before I get on here. I apologize. But the whole league shifting. It's about protecting the quarterback, attacking the quarterback from a defensive perspective, covering your receivers, and creating explosive plays. We're not really living in what the Eagles built their success on, making the Super Bowl run, just pound the ball, first, second down, work play action off of that. The Seahawks did that to manage time and clock, but it wasn't really an offensive Super Bowl this year. We can both agree on that. Offensives are becoming way more explosive, and defenses are becoming more simplistic. So the value of just a good overall defensive player in the first round means more than drafting a edge 5 in the class that you're drafting based off of projectability.
So, Brian, how about you? Do you buy or sell all of that probability about it's just easier if you only have to look in the draft for 17 positions instead of 22?
I think it varies from team to team because, I mean, there's not one way to build your team, how to run an NFL team. If there was, everybody would be doing the exact same thing, and they're not. I mean, there's some similarities, of course. Some certain things that all teams kind of hold to and stuff. But, I mean, there's still every team does something a little bit different. So I don't think there's one way that's the right way or wrong way to do it. It's just different ways to do it. It's because it's all just what's the word I'm looking for? It's all just luck, basically, almost to an extent. With sometimes you get lucky, you draft a guy and everything clicks. Sometimes you draft a guy and it just bad fit and it doesn't work out, or he gets injuries or whatever it is. There's just so many variables and factors that can go into it. hoping you hit on the thing on the player, but you don't know. I mean, kind of what you're describing is kind of how the Packers do it to an extent. They're trying to cut out the variables as much as they can, with taking a few shots here and there at outliers, but they generally try and stay away from the outliers. For example, but I mean, and there's other teams that just don't give a crap about the outlier. Don't give a crap whether you're an outlier or not. If they like you, you're a good player, they'll take you. And if you bust, whatever, who cares? We'll still take a shot at like say a 5'7" wide receiver or whatever. Just making something up, but so yeah, I think like I said, it just varies from team to team. I think there's not one right way to do it. I mean, analytics are part of it to an extent. We've all seen this stuff coming to the NFL. It's all like it's just a big puzzle. Basically, you're taking little pieces from this puzzle, putting together, and hopefully, you're like, okay, everything says this guy should be a good player. So, but still, there's still always some variables there. So, you're just doing your best, doing the best you can, and hoping. There's old Ron Wolf saying, if you hit on, what was the saying? If you get 3 starters out of a draft, you had a really good draft. Basically, like it was never even specific about like how good of a starters they were. Just if you get 3 starters out of a draft, you had a really good draft. So like you calculate that 3 out of 7, that's technically it's not very good, but it's like a baseball basically average. So if like you're hitting average for baseball or a good average for baseball, basically you're having a good draft.
Well, and I would say if you only get 3 starters in every draft, it's going to take you 7 years to build a team. And I don't know too many coaches that have lasted 7 years with a bad team.
Well, I mean, you already have players on your roster as it is, and then you're just trying to hopefully every year you're getting 3 starters out of it. And just if you get 3 starters out, you're having a really good draft or a good draft. And of course, you're going to get some really good players and some really bad players, of course. But I mean, that was how Ron Wolf kind of described it. And it kind of makes sense. And if you look over the history of the draft, that's kind of how it is. Like the better GMs, if you look at their drafts, they've had some bad drafts here and there. I mean, look at New England. They've had a few bad drafts back when what's his name was there. They had some number of bad drafts. So
we don't even remember the name of the coach that didn't make the Hall of Fame anymore.
Yeah,
we remember his girlfriend's name, but not his name. No, I mean, Strange in the first round and all that stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, every GM's going to have bad picks. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're just hoping the majority of them are good picks, at least.
I agree that everybody's going to make bad picks, right? And I think the media likes to talk about the picks that were bad. It's actually easier to talk about how bad of a pick Keon Coleman was than the fact that nearly every other draft pick that was made in that same draft class has been aces. Because
Keon was a high, because he was a high pick, and so it's just that's what they latch onto because it creates views, it creates headlines, create clicks. It's easy content for them to create. So that's how that is, unfortunately.
Okay, so one other question would be like statistical outliers. So like there's some players at the very top of some draft boards, like Ruben Bain, who's a statistical outlier. And then like Steve puts in the chat here, he likes the hand usage to mitigate the fact that Bain doesn't have arm length. So my understanding is there has been no player with the short arms that we're expecting Bain to have measured at the combine that's really been an effective NFL edge, especially worthy of being like picked in the top 10 or the top 20. Like Anthony, do you see a world where Ruben Bain gets out of the top 10?
I see a world, sure, but I wouldn't. That's not what I would expect. I would say there's 85 at least % chance that he goes top 10.
Right. And then Brian was the only person that didn't have Ruben Bain on his edge board. So we did edge big boards, across the channel. And Brian's like, well, he's a defensive tackle. So Brian, do you want to explain Ruben Bain, the defensive tackle?
Yeah, for me watching him, like I think I mentioned this when we talked about edges and we talked about him. I think one of the games people point to this year is one of his big games was the Notre Dame game. But like I watched that game, I didn't see anything special from him as far as an edge rusher. Yeah, you see some explosiveness. and you see some good hand usage, but like I didn't see the speed, I didn't see the bend. I just didn't see I didn't see an edge rush out of him, and he's short, he's squatty, he's like 6'2", I think, or something like that, 6'2" and a half, something like that. You know, he's about 280. You know, he's got sub 31-inch arms. To me, that just you just look at his body and his movement skills and everything. What are his positives and what are his negatives? It just screams defensive tackle to me. And so, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to make a defensive tackle out of 10 pounds, and he's a defensive tackle basically. So, you know, and you can get away with that stuff with being defensive tackle. You can get away with short arms at defensive tackle. You can get away with not really being really fast. You can get away with not being bendy at defensive tackle. And one of the big things at defensive tackles you want to have guys who have power, explosiveness, and stuff like that, because they want to hit that short path to the quarterback. So, I mean, I think he can play some defensive in the NFL. I'm not saying play him 100% of his snaps inside, but I think for the most part, he will play inside in the NFL.
Okay. So from a positional value, Anthony, do you look at like statistical outliers as, how do I want to say it? Before I take a statistical outlier, I would take a less valued position. Do you buy or sell that?
No, I would. I think I would generally. I would say I'd have a bigger, I guess, problem with an outlier than I would a lesser position. Like just in my top 10, I have Caleb Downs at 2. I have Sonny Styles at 3. Ruben Bain, the defensive tackle, I have him as an edge. But he's my number 1. If you, and again, like Arvell Reese, I have as an edge, but if you see him as a linebacker, but he's 5 for me. So like I have all these non-premium position players very high on my board. But like, again, I brought up Cassius Howell before, who's even more of an outlier than Bain is, and he's 56. So, like, that to me, the literally sub 31-inch arms is even more of an outlier than what Bain is, and would really, if he's successful, and I'm not saying he can't be, but that would be a tremendous hurdle to come over. So that to me is a bigger issue, and it's the same with undersized wide receivers and again, like guys with shorter. The Will Campbell conversation that we had last year about his wingspan and arm length for left tackle, like those to me are more potentially detrimental things than just he plays safety or he plays running back or anything like that.
Okay. Well, why don't we pause here for a little podcaster identification? Josh, it has been a while, probably almost like 10 months since you've been on the channel. Do you want to let everybody know what you're up to at Delaware and all of the other great things going on in your life?
So, yeah, undergrad student. I'm in my junior year, so still got a year and a half left of college. Enjoying my time at the University of Delaware right now. It's been awesome. It's been a blessing. Looking to take it forward to whatever else has in store for life, in life for me. But yeah, we're taking it one day at a time, focusing on the job at hand. Sadly, not as involved in the draft media space anymore on Twitter, which I will be back from time to time on a couple podcasts every here and there, but mostly just focus on the day-to-day operations, trying to better myself every day, set myself up for a successful future, hopefully after this. But yeah, we're staying busy.
So how many hours a day do you spend in the Delaware scouting department?
It depends. During the school week, I'm in 6 classes right now, so I'll pop in for a couple hours every single day in between my classes. When it was the transfer portal season, we were in the office 8 to 12 hours a day, every day. It all just depends on what time of season it is. For the player personnel standpoint, we have different things section off for different times of the year. So this is like a little downtime that we have right now for the first time in about 7 months. Spring ball is going to start up here soon. Winter workouts have already started. So everybody's staying busy. We're all continuing to better ourselves every day, and it's just nothing but a blessing.
Brian.
Yeah, just same old stuff. Just on my Twitter, you can catch me at BMoffy NFL. Post clips on there of players, cut ups and stuff like that with little breakdowns and whatnot. You can catch me on there, and then my Substack I haven't updated in a little while, but I've been trying to get to it. Just been busy. And then catch me on here every Sunday night. That's about it.
Anthony.
All right, before I give outros, and I know that this goes against protocol because normally we're wrapping up right now. No, 'cause I have a question I want to ask everybody on the positional value thing. It could be very
go
quick.
for it. I wasn't necessarily going to close out the podcast.
Yeah, it's fine, and it's fine if we do. I just wanted to ask this one thing. If I could, okay, you're building a team. We're not, quarterback is its own thing. I can give you an elite left tackle and an elite edge rusher for your team. Or I can give you an elite defensive tackle and an elite wide receiver. Which pair do you take?
Edge and offensive tackle, and I don't even know that I'm thinking about it.
See,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the answer that the majority would say, and I don't necessarily think I would disagree. But kind of just thinking about the great teams of recent years, I think of what Chris Jones did for the Chiefs and Aaron Donald for the Rams, and even, I wouldn't say he's elite, but like what Milton Williams did for the Patriots, Jalen Carter for the Eagles. Like, defensive tackle does a lot for your defensive line and kind of opens the pathway, so to speak, for edge rushers. And I'm not trying to downplay the value of a really good edge rusher. Obviously, like Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, whatever. But I do think, again, the way that the league has shifted, I think there's more of an argument that an elite defensive tackle can add up to the same kind of value that an elite edge rusher can if utilized in the right way. And then, the wide receiver offensive tackle conversation is always just, it's what, the Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase discussion that we've had. But yeah, go ahead.
So let's piggyback. That's actually a really good discussion point, Anthony. So Josh, do you think there's more game wreckers at defensive tackle or at edge at the NFL level?
If we're saying game wreckers, it's edge rushers. But to Anthony's point, he's completely right. You can take multiple examples of teams that don't have the interior presence that are really lacking what it takes to be a true defense. Take the Ravens this year, for example. Me as a Ravens fan, Justin Madubuike goes down with a neck injury. Let's be real, the run defense was non-existent the whole entire year. And then no pass rushers could work off of Justin Madubuike, so all of our edge rushers were really contained all year. There was, in my opinion, you have to have one or the other if you're not going to have both. If you're not going to have an elite edge rusher or you're going to run a rotation of quality guys, you need to have a guy like an elite 3-tech who really is able to run those stunt and twists and get edge rushers opportunities to get to the quarterback in different ways. You can look at the Seahawks, for example. I keep going back to them. They just won the Super Bowl. But if you want to consider Leonard Williams in that category, you can, you cannot. I know he's on the older side, but having a guy like that who's able to do multiple things from a 3-tech position all the way to a 1-tech, line up as a 5-tech, and then you have Byron Murphy off of him. Having those interior guys to open up opportunities for your edge rushers are really important in this day and age in the NFL. You're not getting many just straight 4-man rushes, edge rushers, both attack the offensive tackles on a vertical set much anymore. You're getting a lot of design stunts and twists post snaps. So that's just a difference of where the NFL is compared to about 10 years ago. But Anthony's right. A really, really good 3-tech does a lot for an NFL organization.
And I would just add too to bring this back to a college/draft perspective. You know, when you watch Ohio State, for example, Caden McDonald at defensive tackle is opening up a lot of opportunities for Arvell Reese when he was used as an edge rusher, and Caden Curry, and linebackers like Sonny Styles to come in and make plays in the run game, and for pass rushers to get one-on-one opportunities because Caden McDonald is in the middle eating double teams. I love David Bailey. I think Romello Height was a hell of a pass rusher as well. A lot of success on that Texas Tech defensive line was because of Lee Hunter, and I would also throw in Skylar Gill-Howard as guys that were, to what Josh was saying, the stunts and twists and opening up, allowing David Bailey and Romello Height to get one-on-one opportunities where they were just so next level that's why they put a whooping on basically any offensive tackle that they went up against this year. So, again, I'm not, if that was the question, would you want David Bailey or Lee Hunter? I guess I'd say David Bailey. But I do think that there's a scheme and a thought process where you could say, give me the interior guy that can eat double teams, that has a pass rush repertoire of his own that he can use, and that can also just hold the point of attack and basically clog up the entire middle, that could then allow my edge rushers to have one-on-one opportunities against offensive tackle play that has kind of, I would say, fallen off, particularly at the college level in recent years. And, because my edge rushers can just win these one-on-one opportunities, it's an easy day for me on defense. So, I'm Brian. You can certainly give your thought on this too, but I do think there's an argument here.
I just think I'm kind of in the middle on it. Like, I said I would take the offensive tackle and these in, but I think it's more specifically just like really good players make everybody else around them better. Really good players open everything else up. Because, you bring up all the defense tackles, you guys brought them up, which are great examples, but also I can bring up other ones with edge rushers, like with Green Bay when Micah Parsons went down, the pass rush just cratered. So you have a really good Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame, whatever level type of player you want to call that guy. He's going to make everybody else around them better because he's going to have all this attention on him. You can see there were clips, there were snapshots of, games from him this past year where he was rushing the passer and there was like three guys like literally watching him. There was three guys like literally turned to Woodson and watching him. So, if you have an amazing player like that, he's going to make the defense better regardless whether he's playing on the inside or he's the outside. So again, I think it's just really good players makes your team better, like especially on that defensive line. If you have two really good pass rushers, whether it's both on the edges or both on the inside or one edge, one inside, whatever, you're going to be cooking with gas. If you have two really good guys who can get after the passer, you're going to have a good defense.
I'll say one more point on that, just so I can get this out of my head before I forget it. I think NFL teams are also starting to notice this trend. At least from the last couple years, we can see a lot of interior defensive linemen getting taken on day 2 that a lot of us project as day 3 guys, just because of the importance of having quality players in the interior positions. In the NFL, they're not just positioning them as defensive tackles. They're positioning them specifically either as a 1 tech, a specific 3 tech, a guy that can be versatile, line up as a 3 tech or a 5 tech. So that's why, for the positional value standpoint as well, the whole topic of this podcast, guys who we project as maybe day 3 talents or guys that have a lot to work on, they get pushed up the draft rankings and they get drafted on the higher end of day 2 and then on the earlier parts of day 3, just because of how important interior defensive line play has been in the NFL recently.
Yeah. Even depth too. Sorry, I'll just real quick also to add on that too is even the depth on defensive line too. You're seeing it even more. There's always been a rotational thing going on in the NFL with defensive line, but even now it's becoming more important to be able to just rotate, just throw guys at offense, just be able to rotate your guys, just be able to throw fresh bodies at them constantly, so you can actually constantly pressure the quarterback, constantly pressure the offense, constantly cause issues with the in the backfield and what have you.
Yeah, and I was going to go back to that whole defensive tackle edge thing. And okay, so I grew up watching Lawrence Taylor, right? Like that was different. And then Bruce Smith and Reggie White could like destroy games on their own, right? And then like nowadays it's like Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett. So the way I would say it is that if I knew at the time of the draft that I was getting a Micah Parsons or I was getting a John Randall. And for those that don't know, John Randall was a really good defensive tackle. I believe he's in the Hall of Fame, but I'd have to go back and double check that he actually got in. But John Randall was unbelievable interior for the Vikings. And then later in his career, they moved him to edge, which was actually really fascinating. But if I had to think of if I'm getting that level of player, I just feel like the edges create more plays. But just because they create more plays doesn't mean that they're like, because the defensive tackles might be like the Tony Saragusa's might be making the Ray Lewis's of the world great. Right. But nobody's going to confuse Tony Saragusa with a Hall of Fame pedigree. Right. So yeah. I get that. I think the likelihood of getting big plays is where my head goes as part of the, let's say, positional value argument. But we've done a pretty good job of kind of going around. Brian, do you want to, have you already told everybody about where all your content is? Yeah. Yep. And then Anthony, have you?
No, I didn't. I decided to steal the spotlight.
Oh, that's okay.
No, as always, you can find me on X at Anthony_Russo97. I post draft clips and analysis and thoughts on X. Obviously, it's Combine week, so yeah, I'll definitely be posting reactions and thoughts on all that. And I'm also going to be trapped in my house because of this freaking blizzard. So I'm sure I'm going to be on Twitter because I'll have nothing else to do for the next couple days. You can find me on, I got my Substack, which is on my X profile. You can just go to my bio and there's a link to it there. Again, I post, draft stuff on it, NFL stuff on it, college football stuff on it. I will probably put out some sort of combine preview kind of thing in the next day or two on that. And I'll be on Draft Professor every Sunday night for the foreseeable future. So you can find me here as well, and all of your daily draft needs at Draft Professor.
Yeah. So Draft Professor, we're here every night at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. We're here twice on Saturday. We're here 3 times on Sunday. So 2 shows Sunday morning, this show Sunday night, and we're covering the draft. And literally as soon as this draft ends, we're going to be diving into summer scouting in May and telling you who's in the next draft class. Want to give a shout out, Brian, you're here several times a week. Durst podcast on Wednesday. Durst, good to see you. Steve, podcast on Thursdays at 7. It's good to see you. But we're here. We do group mock drafts every Friday. This Friday will be Newt Weston and Dale Altman discussing every pick in rounds 1 through 3. So if you want to select for a team in the group mock, go to the Draft Professor Twitter page, find the pinned post, and slide your name into the pinned post, and I will make arrangements for you to pick for your team. For Josh Townsend, Anthony Russo, Brian Maffey, myself, and the 80 podcasters at the Draft Professor, it is really good to see Josh. It's really good to see all of you. Have a good evening, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
See you.